This is the life. Uh-huh. Ah. I could get into this.
This is Koroba.
Oh, yeah. Koroba. Yeah.
Okay, welcome to part 2 of positions and etiquette. I have put and will put in the comments section of this video the location of where you can go pick up the poses that are mentioned in video 1 and in this video. And then when I do the positions video, you'll get to and you'll have them all. If you go get them, they're one by one in a box out in front of a office that's green with a head above it, an animal head above it. So let's get going. This is etiquette, so let's go into addressing free people. A slave always addresses free persons as master or mistress unless given permission by the free person, which is rarely given. I get hacked off when somebody says yes, sir, to me. It should always be yes, master. I am not a sir, I am a master. I hear that say that too much. Only time a slave can use the name of free is to give information to a question. For example, always include jar or mistress, master or mistress with the name of the free. Quote, but as suggested, few if any masters permit their slaves to use their name. It'd be the name of a free man, and then it'd be belittled or soiled. It should be ever touch the tongue of a mere slave, fighting slaves with gore. Next quote. Yes, master, said Ethan apprehensively. You recall Myrus, he said. Certainly, master, said Ethan. Master Myrus. Ethan was now much more on the ground, had it been a trap. A slave girl does not address a free person by the name, but will use the expression master or mistress, or something, or sometimes it refers to the owner, my master, my mistress. Similarly, in referring to a free person, one will commonly use the expression such as Master Publius, Mistress Publia, and so on. If asked whether their master is a slave, might respond, my master is Silas, Achernon of R, as such. Prize of Gore, page 1225. I know I'm doing video, so you have to read 1,000 pages. Greetings and farewells when entering the presence of a free. Now this one's interesting. I just a few minutes ago was in another city. A woman walks up and does not kneel. Now this is a southern city. It wasn't up in Torvatsland, where it's polar regions. It's more in a southern city. It was cool, but not frozen. She did not kneel. So let's discuss this. And then when I brought up kneeling, she argued. So let's discuss this. In Gore by custom, society is dominated by males, so most free expect a slave to acknowledge a free male before a free female. Get this straight. There's two people in a room, and it's a male and a female. The male gets dressed first. If you must choose, of course, a slave would acknowledge your owner first. Owner, male, female. When in greeting, as in entering a long hall, don't try to overburden the conversation with your many greetings. I'm telling you, BDSM is nuts. I've been to Sims where they will literally do 14 greetings in one greeting. Hello, Mark, John, Tom, and you're sitting there waiting. And if you've got that many people in a room and every one of them are doing greetings, we literally take 20 minutes in the greetings. Swiftly enter the room with towel jars, mistresses, and bonds as quickly as possible to not disturb conversation already occurring. Remember this when you enter the presence of more than one free. Select to whom you will do obeisance. We're going to talk about obeisance in a little bit. And we'll show you the position that's available. What to say in greeting. In Gore, a farewell is called for the common farewell used in the books and standard Gorian phrase. I wish you well, a slave would say. I wish you well, Jar. The simple farewell is done. Quote, Farewell, girl, said one of the two slaves. Farewell, girl, said the other. They left. Witnesses of Gore, page 688. I wish you well, Dana, she said. I wish you well, master, I said. Slave Gore of slave girl of Gore. Now, this part is interesting, and listen closely. Again, I admit there's a lot of cities that are not by the book. Oddly enough, having traveled 200 of them, every single one of them say they're by the book. But honestly, it varies. So the by the books aren't always by the book. So let's take a look at this. There are no instances in a book where the phrase well wishes or be well or serve with fire or love or passion or anything else are ever used by the free or slave. A slave would never command a free to be well or do anything else for that matter. But a wish or a hope is always appropriate from a slave. My suggestion is avoid online phrases. It's always appropriate, upon departing the free's departure, also to briefly perform obeisance during the farewell. Now, oddly enough, we're going to deal with obeisance later. My slaves do it every morning when they first greet me. Um, Most girls don't even know what it is, let alone how to do it or what it's for. But it is appropriate to do that when departing from the free, and some masters or mistresses may ask for it, but any free. Addressing other slaves. This is the fun part. Quote, the three girls hurried into a cave. Sandal Thong's switch in hand came to me. She hugged and kissed me. I wish you well, Dana, she said. I too wish you well, mistress, I said, addressing her as mistress, for she was first girl. Catch that. It is common for new girls in training to call other slaves mistress, if they're the first girl or the one training them. Okay? And I've seen this done many, many times. And I just flipped my notes and didn't mean to. Okay, here we go. Quote, yes, mistress, said the blonde. The other two slaves addressed our older girls as mistress. Kishu and I thought it'd be useful in keeping order among them. In any training situation, it's common for the girl being trained to address the female trainer, whether the trainer is bond or free, as mistress. Strict discipline is essential in slave instruction. Explorers of Gore, page 692. Now, other than that, you may call the slaves whatever you wish, whatever seems natural. The word slave is kajira. For more than one kajira, the word male slave is kajiras, and for more than one, kajirai. By the way, that's Latin, in case you're wondering where that comes from, or if you studied Latin. Remember, the gentleman that wrote the Gore series went to Princeton and was highly educated. So he used Latin and other phrases. Although slaves are regarded as brothers and sisters in bondage or daughters of the chain, and you'll hear people call themselves chain sisters, a sister is neither a sibling or chain sister, that is, the slave of the same jar. Many slaves will be offended if you address them as sis or sister if you're not one of their chain. There is no case, however, in the books where one slave used sister as a nickname for another slave. Now we're to obeisance. This is an interesting one. Unfortunately, most slaves in Gore have no clue about this. Quote, should I assume the obeisance position? First obeisance position, kneeling, head to the tiles, hands to the floor. Perhaps second obeisance position, belly to the floor, palms down, besides my head, while mine might be able to reach inch forth to press one's lips to his feet. Conspirators of Gore, page 128. So, to enter the presence of the free means you have come or they have come close enough to be addressed. You get that? If they can hear you in chat, if chat comes up and they can hear you in chat, you need to go ahead and start following protocol. And if the free recognizes you in any way in words or emotes, then you're in their presence, which means you're ready to serve them. Okay? When you first enter the presence of the owner, you immediately perform obeisance. It is a good ruling. It is a good ruling only when when you're in your owner's house. There is no bond kneels at the long haul unless the free force it to occur. Now get this point. If you're in the north, you will perform obeisance in your master's house only. However, if you're in the south, when you first greet your master, even if it's outside of the home, you can still do obeisance, and I've seen that done. It's only in the north, it's only done in the home. Okay? In the case of slaves in training, owner also applies to any overseer from the house. So when I say owner, you can read any overseer of the house. That includes if you're in a kennel, that'd be head slaver, anybody that's doing the training. Perform obeisance. Shawnee, go to obeisance, please. That's one part. There's actually another one, I believe it's called bara. And we'll discuss that at another time, but there's two ways to do obeisance. This is not the one where you can kiss the foot. There's a second one, and I'm not having her do that, but we'll do it when we do positions. Performing obeisance means you kneel down, rest on your heels. You lean forward, your palms to the ground, okay, until your brow rests to the floor. This is, yeah, our brows are down to the floor. Then you kick back on your usual position. Quote, have you finished polishing my boots, he asked. No, I said, with my master's permission, I will do so now. He lifted a finger, dismissing me. Quickly, I rose to my heels and performed obeisance. Then I rose to my feet and headed down, humbly frightened, hurried to the back portion of the tent. Dancers of Gore, page 564. Notice she did obeisance in leaving her master. If you're already serving, that is preparing, fetching, etc., you can't enter then you cannot enter the presence of another free unless you're called by them. Get this straight. If you're already serving, going to get your master's wine, something else, you cannot enter the presence of another free unless you're called to them. If you're not serving, you should enter their presence unless you say they do not wish to be disturbed. So another master can't just call you over. Basically, you can't. Well, he can call you over, unless you're called to them. But you don't just go over when you've already been given an order by your master. Quote, swiftly we assumed a common form of slave obedience, kneeling, our hands on the ground, our heads to the ground, our hands on the floor, our heads to the ground. Many masters thought it tends to be rather associated usually with some cities, requiring that this position of their girls, usually when they first enter his presence, or find themselves in a room as he has entered in his presence. She is then usually, when given permission, permitted to lift her head, but is to remain kneeling before him. Get this before it, in a standard position, her knees closed. If she comes to a house or water slave, her knees open. If that was the sort of slave I was. Dancers of Gore, page 17. She stays kneeling until given permission to raise her head. That's in the quote. Look at it closely. She is usually, when given permission, permitted, but it remains kneeling before him, standing in standard position. But she stays there until... Shawnee, go ahead and rise up, please. But otherwise, she stays in that position. Now, there's a standard rule, and I've seen this happen. Some masters, including me, go Aflac when unintentionally, or who knows. There's 100 reasons why that can happen. I would say, depending on your master, wait about 3 minutes. If he doesn't reply, don't say master, because it's breaking obeisance. But if he doesn't reply at all, unless he has a habit of doing that, I'd say go ahead and come off of obeisance. He may be Aflac. Now, if you choose to, stay in obeisance for 25 minutes. That's okay too. But the point of it is, if you think he may have gone Aflac, go ahead and come up, but be willing to take the consequences. All right, quote, then he whipped, loosed the fiber on my wrist, and rolled it, putting it in his pouch before this went to stand before me. I put my hand down and began to lick and kiss his feet soberly. By the way, I know a slave that does this every time she meets her mistress. Yes, we're obviously a highly intelligent. You are obviously a highly intelligent woman, he said. You do that very well. Dancers of Gore, page 730. Now, wait for a post to reply if you're performing obedience. If none is forthcoming, wait about 2 or 3 minutes without a reply. Finally, in the context you're otherwise, return to the kneeling. Again, if you've messed up, take the consequences. Know your master. But occasions happen where he gets distracted, whatever, somebody comes up, he gets interrupted, and the point is, don't leave it there 5 or 10 minutes. Slave formula. This is a phrase. There is a phrase or two indicating your willingness to serve. And this goes back to etiquette. That's why this tape is called etiquette. So let's deal with that. Often a slave formula is said when performing obeisance. It could be a common greeting or even ask for permission to speak or another thing. Remember, speech is only allowed at their permission. You ask permission to slave speak unless you have an agreement with your master to just go ahead and open up. One common formula is for you to say in the morning to your master, I hope to be pleasing to you today. Okay? So that's something you could say while doing obeisance. You may stay in obeisance as long as you wish unless you're commanded otherwise, but remember, obeisance in this way is an action, is not a position that you must be released from. Okay. Quote, she then, putting her head down, began to lick and kiss on my legs and feet. She performed her submission behavior for several minutes, piously, desperately, beseeching, entreating, Guardsmen of Gore, page 211. Alternate positions of obedience. I brought this up earlier, that there's actually some alternate ones. And now I'll tell you where it is, and I am actually right about Bara. I was hoping I was. Quote, now, said Kalis to the kneeling girl who bent over. She kneeled down to the floor. To your belly. Wriggle on the floor to your master, and then put your head down and lick and kiss his feet until you're permitted to stop. Mariners of Gore, page 788. Number one, first obedience may be called karta. But the name karta is an Oniism. But sometimes you're going to find it in your callers or somebody refer to it that way. Second obedience, which was in a quote I actually read earlier. Or belly, could be called belly, belly to the floor, palms down beside your head, or bara, or nail to the whip. And there's going to be a class we'll do where you're actually going to, I'll go have her demonstrate all those. Not today. Quote, should I assume the obeisance position? First obeisance, kneeling head to the tiles, hands to the floor. Perhaps second obeisance, belly to the floor, palms down, beside my head, where thou may reach, inch forward to press one's palm to kiss the feet. Conspirators of Gore, page 128. Okay, so although it's not demanded, you may perform obedience while leaving or returning. And I already read that quote earlier. Now, leaving the presence of the free. Like I said, this is an etiquette class, and as a free woman, none of this matters. But as a slave, there's rules for everything. It may explain why some women become free and then some of them regret it too. I think all the fun's with the slaves, but that's my opinion. To leave the presence, as a slave, you need permission to leave the presence of a free person. If you did not enter the presence or not called, you don't need that. So if you're within chat range, you need permission. Okay? Or you weren't called to their presence. For instance, if you're across the room and he didn't call you over, you do not need this permission. Remember to always beg nicely for permission to leave. There's going to be a whole class on begging, but not today. If you don't need to indicate why, just ask, may I leave, Jar, or a master, is generally enough. Quote, may I withdraw, she asked. No, I said. Such as she does not have the permission or free permission, without permission, either implicit or explicit. Mariners of Gore, page 64. Now this one is fun, and slaves, especially those that are BDSM, love to ignore this, but we've got to deal with it. And this has been screwing up Gore. Well, actually, all this stuff's been screwing up Gore. But let's go through it. Conflicting orders. Slaves never disobey the free. Period. Slaves in Gore are kept under strict discipline, even though their owner's command take precedence over all others. Slaves always obey the free who are present. Slaves always obey the free who are present. If your master's not present and you're given a conflicting order, you obey the free who's present. And I know in BDSM you can say, well, my master told me. Not in Gore. Now, you can choose to disobey it, but understand you could end up injured or dead or tied up. Your choice. And they'd be totally within his rights. Okay? You could beg to be allowed to keep your master's order, explain why you should not obey, but in the end, if you're commanded, you obey. Or take the consequences. That just happened to me earlier. A girl came up, refused to kneel. I went into IM and said, you need to kneel. She said, well, I play a bondservant. I said, you're in the South. You need to kneel. So she made another comment, and I said, look, you can choose not to, but you're going to have the consequences. And I was going to pull a sword and literally tie her ass up. So, like I said, you can disobey, but take the con. She, oddly enough, kneeled and kept her mouth shut after that. Quote, the free person who is, no, this isn't a quote, I'm sorry. The free person who commanded you, even your owner, is no longer present, and the other person gives you an order that contradicts these commands or instructions. You may try to explain respectively you're following a conflicting command, so the free knows he'll be invalidating your master's command. If he insists, you must obey. You cannot say no to the free. You should now here is the other side of it. You should report it to your jar and then accept any consequences likely. Your jar will take the matter up with the free, since this free has offended his honor by knowingly. So what that means is, if a girl refuses to obey me, I'm going to go to her master and say, you got a really bad slave. She's not obeying the free, which shames the master. Now, the flip side of that, if you go to your master and say, Master, I was commanded, to disobey your order, but I did it. Number one, it shows that you are respecting the Gorian laws. Number two, your master will probably go and kick the ass of the person that told you to disobey him. That's the flip side. He will go say something. But if you don't, you can end up, like I said, tied up and kicked around and all kinds of stuff. If a new order comes from someone who you think has more right to command you, especially the honor, you would obey immediately. If the new order comes from a free person you perceive with less rights to command you, then you look at the original free person who commanded you and wait for their confirmation. You may even ask, Master? Slaves are never disrespectful of the free or argumentative. There is a poster out in front of Glorious R that says that this applies in OCC and in chat. They said disrespect in IMs will be basically treated the same as disrespect in chat. A slave is a slave as a slave. Now, you can choose to go ahead, and I've had this happen where slaves come online and mouth off in chat in IMs. But then you have another problem. The last girl that did that to me, I turned around and said, your serve better be really good. Because and she had already messed up twice on the serve. I was going to wait for the third one, because then I can turn around, basically tie her ass up or kill her, because she already smarted off to me in IMs. So she better be a damn good role player. That's all I'm going to ask. But my point is, in Glorious Arts, right on their building in huge print, don't smart off in IMs or in chat. It's going to be considered the same. You show respect for the masters. There is a huge habit of pretending like that you can disrespect the master in chat and then turn around and go, yes, master. And basically it shows a couple of things. Number one, you're pretending to be a slave. You're not really a slave. And that's number two. Like I said, you better be damn perfect in your role play or take the consequences. Okay. If you have an OCC, keep it OC. If you think an issue is that important, then stop the role play. By the way, I would not do that. The stop the role play bullshit, that's considered bad etiquette. But I am the other person moderator to help you out. That's really where you want to go. I am the moderator to try and help you out. Going to black or just go basically stop the role play is not good. It's considered bad. And be honest, if other masters catch on you pulling that, they're not going to role play with you. Get a hold of the moderator, find out who they are, know who they are in a city, and go to them and have them step in. An overseer, high bond, or senior bond can help you. However, the more things you keep in role play, the better it turns out. Okay. Role play itself. Last little bit. We are wrapping. Okay. Any situations may lead to conflicts, and certain free may not have the same standards that we teach. It varies, guys. Role play to the extent of your best abilities. Take discipline and punishment in stride. This is part of your lives as slaves. There are many times it seems impossible to please everyone. Actually, you may not be able to please anyone, but a good slave should try and be pleasing. On another note, All slaves aren't always good slaves. You may perhaps disobey or make mistakes, or have icy dislikes or meannesses. These can make for far more interesting role play and give the free more chance to role plays as masters and mistresses. But don't go wild and just be a brat or a slave who doesn't feel pain when the slip falls. Or my favorite, say, well, I'm just a Tanuk, so I'm sassy. Well, you're going to be a dead Tanuk or a tied up Tanuk, because I've had people literally mouth off to the free and say, well, I'm just a Tanuk. And even free women pull that on me. And honestly, free women can be made slaves. The last one that pulled that on me, I told her to get out of the city or I was going to put her into slavery. And then, by God, that girl left. So my point is, all of this you need to take into consideration. If you don't like all of this, I would suggest you go to BDSM and get out of gore. But don't bring BDSM into gore if you can't handle it. Or you could go ahead and replay Being the Free, which would totally take you off the hook. But please don't come in and keep going.